Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're going to be comparing a Toyota RAV4 hybrid to a Honda CR-V hybrid. Before we get into the comparison, I do want to mention that my car buying guide is available for sale. So if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, you don't want to be a part of the 90+% of people that are paying over MSRP in today's market, link to that in the description down below. Let's get into the video. Starting things under the hood of the CR-V, we have a naturally aspirated 2-liter 4-cylinder that's paired to a hybrid system. Total system output is 212 horsepower, and then fuel economy averaged out is 38 miles per gallon between city and highway, which is really solid for an SUV in this segment. I love how you can see all the hybrid stuff around the engine bay, though. It's pretty cool, and it's all in orange, so it just pops out. Now, popping under the hood of the RAV4, we have a naturally aspirated 2.5-liter 4-cylinder. Total system output with this particular powertrain is 219 horsepower, and then combined fuel economy is 40 miles per gallon between city and highway. So the RAV4 has a little bit more power, a little bit better fuel economy, and it also has a larger engine compared to the CR-V. Now, popping back over to the CR-V, you guys can see here from a front-end perspective, it looks super similar to a regular CR-V, as in it looks the same as a regular CR-V. You've got the LED accent lights there with the reflector lights, and notice how those pop off. I love how they have the chrome trim that goes from the headlights into the center portion of the grille, and then you've got your normal Honda hood, and then notice you've got some blue around the logo. That's what signifies that this is a hybrid, but the rest of the front end is pretty much unchanged aesthetically. Look at the fog lights down below. Definitely looks cool. They do steal some design cues from Acura every so often with the Hondas, I've noticed. And then popping over to the RAV4, so this is the recently refreshed version of the RAV4. So you can see the hood here, definitely flat and muscular looking, and notice how it's like lower down there in the center a little bit. And you can see the newly redesigned headlights with the LED accent light and the projector bulb. Definitely has an interesting futuristic appearance to it. And then you got the fog light off to the side with the parking sensors on the front end. Notice here with the Toyota logo, there's a little camera there below it, but also you guys can see here at the Toyota logo, the blue pops out quite a bit more, so it's a little bit more noticeable compared to the Honda that this is a hybrid. So yeah, definitely interesting. And then you see the darker trim down below, but other than the logo, it looks just like every other RAV4 from a front end perspective, and I think it's a good looking vehicle, especially considering the refresh that they've done with the RAV4. I think that it just improved the overall aesthetic of the RAV4, so that's definitely a big plus, and you guys can see the nostrils there in the front grille. Now, popping to the side of the CR-V, notice they didn't do a crazy setup for the tires and wheels. They just basically kept it normal. Sometimes with hybrids and electric vehicles, they'll kind of change things up where they'll do really skinny tires to improve the range, and then they'll do mostly closed off wheels again to improve range, and then also with hybrids, fuel economy, right? If it's not fully electric. Anyways, you can see there with the plastic molding for the fender flares, and then down on the side as well, and the trim just up above that. And then notice you got the silver trim that goes around the windows, and there's your full side view. It's a pretty good looking vehicle from a side perspective. And then popping over here to the RAV4, you can see that the wheels are a little bit more angular with the appearance, just a little bit sharper. So they kind of remind me of kind of like off-road type wheels in a sense, even though this isn't an off-road package by any means, but just with kind of what they're going for. And then there's a quick look at the front suspension on the RAV4. Again, plastic molding for the fender flares, and then all along the side. It's kind of like a thing for the segment. They do the plastic molding. Got the little splash guard right there. And then notice how the badging is blacked out on this actually, which is pretty cool. Well, at least on the side. And then notice you've got the rails there at the top. And then here's our full side view. And again, with the trim, there's a little bit of silver, but also some blacked out trim as well. And then notice there's the silver there on the door handles. Well, chrome technically. So it's kind of like a mix between both of them. Kind of interesting what they've done from a material standpoint with the RAV4. And then here's the key fob for the CR-V. So I know it's got the Honda logo. You've got remote start. You've got the function to open up the rear hatch, which is automatic. Or I should say power rather than automatic. My bad. But yeah, it's a nice feeling key fob. I definitely like Honda's newer key fob in terms of the look and feel of it. It feels a little bit more premium compared to a lot of other manufacturers in the segment. You got the cargo cover here in the rear, and then notice you can pull those latches to lower down the second row seats right there if you're in the back, so that you can just quickly load something up, which is definitely practical. And then the storage space underneath, which is not massive but practical nonetheless. You can put a few items back there. And then closing it up, you guys can see that you can adjust the height at which it opens. And yeah, overall, I mean, the CRV is practical from a storage space perspective in the rear. Now, going over the rest of the rear from a stylistic perspective, it's unchanged compared to any other CRV. You can see the distinctive taillights, and then notice the trim there that goes along, and you guys can see tons of snow falling off. But also, again, blue around the logo to signify this is a hybrid. And then notice the exhaust tip's kind of hidden there down below because with hybrids, with all these manufacturers, they're trying to hide that it's still using a combustion engine. Now here's a key fob for the Rav4. Now notice it doesn't look like it has remote start. It has the hybrid logo there on the back. You press the lock button a couple times and hold it down. It's how Toyota's system works to do the remote start function. Not exactly the most intuitive, but you know, gets the job done, right? Got your Rav4 floor mat, and then you can see one of the speakers for the sound system, which it looks really cool in terms of the texturing on the speaker. It definitely has like a rugged appearance. And then cargo cover. So notice there's a lot of similarities so far with both of these. And then notice we've got this little loop that's apparently very hard to pull. Spare tire underneath, a little bit more storage than what looked like the CRV had. In terms of the trunk storage space, though, they're pretty much the same. Super, super similar. Notice you got the floor mats there onto the back of the seat. Well, not floor mats, but the covering on the back of the seat so you keep the seat clean. And this does have the foot activated thing, which never seems to work for me. I think I'm just too impatient with it. You've got to be like slower. But yeah, every single time I try it in a car, it just like is like, nope, I don't want to open. And I'm like, okay, sorry. Now finishing things up here with the rear. Notice again, it's kind of interesting with some of the trim pieces here. So taillights, I think I like the CRV taillights a little bit more than the RAV4. That's just my personal preference. But notice all the badges are blacked out here in the rear. So it's kind of weird. You've got like a mix between chrome and blacked out accents all over this RAV4. Still have the blue around the logo to signify that it's a hybrid. But notice this one is prominent with the exhaust tips, right? The CRV tries to hide them, whereas the RAV4 is like, nope. We got an internal combustion engine still. You can see the splash guards as well. But, you know, overall, it's a great looking rear end for the RAV4. Now, popping to the interior of the CRV, notice that we've got some padding there at the top, and then you can see the wood trim and then more padding down below. And you can see the door handle pretty normal, a couple speakers for the sound system. And then here the seats, same thing with the padding, and then notice they're all down the center. And of course, got to clean off the shoes so I don't get a bunch of snow in the interior. But yeah, it's spacious back there. It's not a massive SUV, but it's got decent space there in the rear. Of course, got some charging ports and then our cup holder armrest situation, which is always the most important thing in a car. But popping over to the RAV4, you'll notice super similar setup. Looks different from an aesthetic perspective, right? It's got Toyota's kind of theme on it, but tons of padding. No wood trim or anything like that. But you can see you've got heated seats for the rear, which is nice. Pretty normal door handle. Really sturdy feeling for like the handle there on the inside. And then I love, again, the texturing on the speaker for the sound system. And then here are the seats again. So notice pretty similar setup as what you have on the CRV, where it's perforated there in the center, kind of doing an interesting design. I will say the CRV interior does look a little bit cooler with certain elements on the seats and the door panel. And then notice pretty much just as spacious from a room perspective. Got some vents there, and then little USBs down below to charge some devices. And then, of course, got the armrest cup holder, which, again, most important part of a vehicle. You can never miss that. And also, notice rubber floor mats, which is definitely a nice practical feature, especially in the wintertime, which is when, of course, the CRV video was filmed. Popping back over to the CRV, we're going to go over the door panel here in the front. So notice it is identical to the rear with the padding and then the wood trim and then more padding down below. And then we've got all of our window controls right there, and then the mirror adjustments, memory seats as well, and then another speaker for the sound system. Notice the mirrors. They do have blind spot monitoring. And then here's the front seat, which was covered up, so you can see the other front seat. It's identical to the rear in terms of material use, just a little bit more aggressive with the bolstering. You guys can see there. Power adjustments on the side of the seat. Then you got the pedal layout just down below. And then notice the gas cap release, hood release. And then you got stability control and then stuff for like the lane departure and other safety tech like the collision assistance, parking sensors, and then the hatch release. And then notice more wood trim. Definitely a nice look. Popping over to the RAV4 again. You'll notice here with the door panel looks pretty much identical again to the rear, so notice they kind of carry things throughout. So you've got padding all over. Got blind spot monitoring there for the mirrors. And then notice down below. And then there's all the window controls. do have memory seats. But again, notice they've gone for less of a luxury appearance and more just like, hey, you've got padded stuff, but we're not going to put wood trim or anything like that. And then here are the seats, which again, perforated leather in the center, and then you guys can see there on the side. Well, I shouldn't say leather. When I say leather, put that in quotations, okay? Okay. But yeah, really nice padding. And then you can see the adjustments there on the side of the seat. And then again, the floor mat down below. Pedal layout, pretty normal, nothing too crazy. And then notice gas cap release and hood release. It seems like Honda and Toyota are just copying each other. And then camera button, steering wheel, heated button. And then you've got the opening for the hatch for the rear, that as well. And yeah, going from that back to the CRV. Guys will notice the startup here, which is pretty cool. And now going over the steering wheel, you can see here with, again, padding all around, and then you got the stitching there on the center portion. And then you've got the controls for like the heated steering wheel button, and then the steering assistance with the adaptive cruise control, and then the controls there on the other side for the phone commands and all that fun stuff. And then your regular turn signal, windshield wiper, stock situation, pretty normal stuff. But then going from that into the gauge cluster, you guys can see pretty cool futuristic looking with the design on it. And also you guys will notice there since it's a hybrid, so it's basically showing us if you're charged or if you're in the power mode. And then also goes red and aggressive when you pop into sport mode, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I love how instead of showing RPMs, it's like, hey, you're either using power or you're not, right? And then here's the backup camera setup, which it's interesting that Honda still isn't doing like 360 camera views on their cars. It'll be interesting to see when they release that. With some of the cars, right, they had like the turn signal camera, but they're not doing like 360 views, which is kind of interesting. But, you know, as for the infotainment system, it's pretty good. Response time on it is pretty solid. The buttons on the side are really intuitive. And again, response time on the buttons on the side is fantastic. The screen is not the most responsive, but it's solid. And then dual zone climate controls down below. You got heated seats there for the front as well. And then notice parking brake, and then you got your brake hold, and then the transmission selector, and then that's the drive mode select. You do have the full EV mode if you got enough charge. And then you've got like your wireless phone charging area. And then notice a couple cup holders, and then here's the center console, which is kind of interesting how they have the whole thing set up. It's really good for storage space. Like there's a ton of storage space, but it's definitely not normal compared to other cars. So it takes a second to get used to. More wood trim there, and then notice the padding on the dash. And opening up the glove box, nothing too crazy. It's got decent storage space, right? And then we do have a sunroof, just a regular sunroof, not panoramic or anything like that. And then you do have the little glass there so you can see the kids in the back. So definitely practical from that perspective. And then sorry about the glare in this video. It's kind of hard to see the window sticker. But you guys can see the base price there. Most of the equipment here is standard on the CRV. There's not a lot of optional equipment to add. But you can see the total MSRP there, $37,000, almost $38,000, which, yeah. But anyways, going from the CRV back over to the Rav4. Pretty cool animation there with the startup, right? Now, going over the steering wheel setup here, you can see again padding all around, stitching there on the center portion. And then with the steering wheel controls, again, you got like the cruise control, lane departure assistance, volume controls, all that normal practical stuff. Nothing too crazy happening. Turn signal, light stock, windshield wiper stock, in the same exact format as what they have on the Honda. Again, they're just copying each other left and right? And then here's the center gauge cluster. So this actually has analog gauges, right? The CRV is pretty much like all, it's like a screen setup. It's again, futuristic looking. This is not as futuristic looking, still super practical, like shows you whether you're in charge or eco or power, right? And then you do have that screen there in the center though that you can go through different menus, which definitely adds to the practicality of it. And 6.3 miles per gallon so far. I mean, it hasn't been driven, so that's why, but yeah, funny that it's like showing such low fuel economy. And then here's the menus you can scroll through in the center. Again, intuitive, easy to use. I don't think it looks as cool as a CRV, but I think that, you know, practicality is there, so that's all I really care about personally. And then on top of that, you do have some drive modes. Notice it gets red and aggressive and sport, just like with the CRV, so that's super similar. And I like when they do that, when it actually changes in sport mode, so you feel like something substantial is happening versus, oh, I went into sport mode and you don't really notice. Anyways, infotainment system. Notice here it's actually showing what's happening, right? The engine's charging the battery, which is pretty cool. You've got the backup camera system. Notice we do have a bird's eye view, so definitely a little bit better than the CRV from a camera system perspective because you do get that bird's eye view, which helps out, adds to the practicality. Resolution on both of them is pretty similar, though, I will say that. And so you'll notice all the analog controls on either side, and then you got that 360 view, which helps out with parking. Kind of reminds me of like a Grand Theft Auto view with that, right? Like how the older Grand Theft Autos, not the new ones, in terms of like the resolution on it. But anyways, as for the rest of the infotainment system, response time is good with the screen. I feel like they're pretty similar in terms of usability and in terms of like how they look and everything. Like I wouldn't rate one over the other from an infotainment system perspective. They're both pretty much the same, in the same league. And then you got the padding with the stitching there on the dash, and then dual zone climate controls. And notice this has heated and cooled seats, so that's definitely a plus. And got a stability control button, which is super important. Still have a wireless phone charger, charging area, just like the CRV has, which again adds to the practicality. You can turn it on or off, which is kind of interesting. So you can use it as regular storage. Drive mode select down here, which is really important. So quite a few different drive modes you can go into, which is neat. And then you got the shifter as well for the transmission. And then notice here cup holders, and then a little bit more normal design on the center console, but obviously not as, I mean, it's still spacious, but it doesn't seem like it's as spacious as the CRV. And then, but you do get a above the glove box storage space, which is CRV doesn't have, and then pretty normal glove box. And again, that padding and stitching kind of continues across the dash. Harder touch at the top of the dash, right? There's a little bit of give in it. And then this has the camera mirror system, which Toyotas are adding in on their higher up models, or Toyota is adding in, not Toyotas, sorry. I tried. But notice no mirror there, like the CRV, but you do get a panoramic sunroof, so that's definitely a nice luxury feature. Got the controls for that right there. Pretty straightforward with that whole setup. And now here's a window sticker. A little bit easier to see than the window sticker on the CRV, but you can see that both of them use the eCVTs, which are a little bit different than a regular CVT. A lot of automakers are not calling them CVTs anymore because they function differently. But you can see the base price is actually pretty similar to the base price on the CRV, but this one has a lot of options to add to it to get it, the RAV4 to where it's at now. And you guys will see in just a moment. After everything, it stickers for just over $42,000, if I remember correctly. Yeah, or almost $43,000. So there is a bit of a, I mean, you're like almost $38,000 and almost $43,000. So there's pretty big price difference. And so to fully sum things up with this comparison, first off, pretty similar in terms of the features between both the vehicles. There's some features that, you know, one has over the other that, right, there's some key things that the RAV4 is better at, and there's some key things that the CRV is better at. But here's what I have to say is the CRV interior feels a little bit more luxury because of the wood trim and the design and everything. The RAV4, on the other hand, right, just has some nicer elements like the panoramic sunroof, air-conditioned seats as well. And so it's kind of difficult. And again, the RAV4 does get a little bit better fuel economy, but that's, you know, 2 miles per gallon is not a massive amount, and you're paying like $5,000 more for the RAV4. And so, yeah, it's really just going to depend on which one you like more. But I would say the CRV is a slightly better value when you're just looking at it purely from a monetary standpoint. But there's certain features that the RAV4 has that the CRV doesn't. And if you want those features, it's like, yeah, got to go for the RAV4. So let me know which one you guys would pick.